morning. Welcome back to another KBO Collections Hobby Drive. Friday morning, finishing up the week. Very happy about that. Got some plans for this weekend in the house, around the house. Anyway, before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about the weather. Very partly cloudy this morning. Cool, not cold. I mean, again, it's below freezing, but it's just barely below freezing. So I don't really consider that cold in the wintertime. If you're just a little under freezing in the wintertime, that's not cold, in my mind. Anyway, so yeah. So headed to work this morning, and so I do have some plans for this weekend. My plans are kind of similar to my plans that I had last weekend. I'm going to be messing around with some cards a bit, and in addition to that, I made the trip to IKEA last night. So I was planning to probably make the trip on Saturday, which is tomorrow, but then I thought about it. I was like, you know what? I was like, that place is an absolute madhouse on the weekends. I was like, a madhouse. I was like, so I'm going to bypass all of that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go after work. Now, it's about an hour and a half drive from where I live at. So I finished work, drove. It was about 2 hours to get there, two and a half hours to get there, because I was driving through the rush hour traffic time, right? So that tacked on an extra hour or so. On the way back, it was about an hour and a half. And that was no traffic because it was later at night and everything. So what did I get at IKEA? Well, so basically, what I'm planning to do is I wanted a card closet or a card cabinet. And so, like, all of my boxed up cards, I wanted to put them in a cabinet or a closet rather than just sitting on a bookshelf like they currently are, all stacked up, all random like. So I bought a cabinet that I can put in the corner that should hold everything that I have, and it should also allow for some growth room. It should allow for some room to grow. And here's the thing, I think I'm going to try to keep it to that cabinet, and if it starts to go outside of that cabinet, then I'm going to have to get rid of something. Plain and simple. I'll have a cabinet, and that is what it is. So anyway, so I got that. Also, I bought another cabinet because I've got all my camera gear and stuff like that, and I basically have just had it in a little plastic drawer system thing, and it sucks, it's cracked, it's old, it's whatever, and I just don't like it, but I just haven't replaced it. So anyway, so I bought a cabinet to put all my camera gear in, like my cameras, my lenses, things like that. So now I'll have a designated storage space for that as well. So my boxes of cards, designated storage space from IKEA. My camera gear, designated storage space from IKEA. So that's what I did yesterday, bought that. Now, so what I wanted to talk about today, though, outside of those personal things, was something that I saw on Twitter yesterday. So yesterday I saw a tweet, and it was asking about what do you consider vintage? So I got to thinking about it, and my thoughts on vintage has always been, and when I'm saying my thoughts on vintage has always been since I've returned to the hobby. When I was a kid, I didn't really know vintage as vintage. I just knew it as like, oh, those are some really old cards, but that was me as a kid. When I returned, I was like, vintage, anything pre-1980. That was sort of my definition of pre-1980. And then in the conversation, I saw some interesting things, and it made me think about my evaluation of vintage. Because the thing is, we're all getting older, and vintage to me, at my age, may not be the same as vintage to somebody that's 20, right? Just because we were born at different times, like I may start vintage, earlier than they do, in terms of like my dating and stuff. So that's the thing. But back to the responses. One of the responses was that anything older than 40 years, so anything older than 40 years, they consider vintage. I kind of like that. I like that. That's a pretty fair assessment. I would say once you reach around 40, that's probably about, I would say that's probably close to a peak to where you get kind of start to get nostalgic about things, kind of like maybe a turning point in life when you reach 40, the early 40s, things like that. So as a result, I would say that 40 is a pretty fair assessment in terms of what could be or should be considered vintage. And then another person replied, whatever is before my birth year. So whatever comes before my birth year. Again, that I think is a pretty fair assessment. So if I had to break things down and kind of give like a number, I don't think I would settle on the 40-year mark. I don't think I would settle on the, I don't think I'd settle on the 40-year mark. I don't think I would settle on the, basically the before my birth year mark. Now, what do I think would be a fair compromise? I would say 30 years. Anything that's over 30 years old, I believe that's when you start to crack the vintage, is what I would say. Now, here's the thing. I'm still going to call vintage myself. I'm still going to call it anything 79 and before, but as I think more about it, 30 years seems pretty fair. That's a decent amount of time. So, I don't know. Maybe let's go with 30 years, and that's just my opinion on it. And that's my new definition of it. Anything that's 30 years. And where did I come up with 30 years? It just seems, I think I came up with that is because it seems like a lot of people in their early 30s came back into the hobby, or a lot of people came back into the hobby in their early 30s. So I'm like, well, like that's around when they were born or a little bit before they were born. So, like maybe that would be a good cutoff point for vintage. So what does that mean? That actually means it's like 1991 would be vintage? Wow. So everybody get out your 91 Fleers because they're vintage, man. They're vintage. So anyway, that's just kind of what I was thinking about. Just something I thought, I just kind of thought a little bit about it. What would I consider vintage? I like the answer of anything over 40 years. I like the answer of anything before my birth year. I decided I was going to take both of those and come up with my own little compromise and say that, something in the 30-year range. So less than 40, but probably right around the time that most people most likely got back into the hobby if they had been out of the hobby. So that is all I have today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe. By the way, let me do this. I'm gonna turn this around. Got a really nice looking sunrise going on out here. Just kind of wanted to show that off as I go, just for a second. So pretty cool stuff. So anyway, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. See you next time. Peace.